Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to my channel for another Hot Toys 1/6 scale Ahsoka series / Rebels figure unboxing and review. Today, we're taking a look at Chopper. Now I got mine at a discount from Pop Collectibles. As always, do your own research, make sure you're comfortable before buying. I've popped a link to their site in the description, along with the discount code Justin's Collection, for 5% off your order if you decide to buy from them. While you're down there, why not hit that subscribe, bell notification icon, and join button, so you're notified as soon as a new Ahsoka series / Rebels figure review goes live on the channel. I cannot tell you how long I've been waiting for a 1/6 scale Chopper. I considered getting that 12-inch, kid-focused one and doing a repaint on him and then popping that in the collection as a placeholder. But then they announced this before I got around to doing that. I'm glad they did because I would have butchered it. As for the box art, up front we've got an image of the actual figure, a metallic foil Star Wars logo below it, then the glossy wraparound banner featuring some figure photography and blue as the accent color. On the side of the box, another shot of Chop. It's an almost full body one. They've just cut off the bottom of his little feet. Be careful of the antenna. As you're sliding the protective plastic sleeve back on the box, the one it comes in, if you catch the top of this artwork, you are going to tear it. Trust me. I'm speaking from experience. Around the back, warnings, legal information, and Hot Toys store locations. Oh, that right there is pure Rebels goodness. We've got Chop up front, Sabine and Hera behind him, and even Sabine's Loath Cat making a little cameo appearance. I'm hoping they release relatively quickly, because they've been dropping the Ahsoka series figures at a blistering pace so far, very quickly and way ahead of schedule. I think the reason for that is probably just because these were low volume, low batch releases. People, unfortunately, didn't turn out for the Ahsoka series figures. I understand. Some of y'all didn't like the show, but I did, and I'm here for these Rebels characters in 1/6 scale. First, in-hand impressions for Chop. He's a cute little guy. I'm loving what I'm seeing so far. I've got a question for y'all, though, before we get stuck in. Do you like it when they use full-size figure boxes for astromechs? Or would you prefer a smaller box made specifically for them? I think that's the way to go, because shrinking the box down just means less space being taken up in your storage unit, your closet, or wherever the heck else you keep your boxes. What we're going to do now is get all of his accessories laid out in the light box and take a closer look at everything he comes with. Hot Toys, why? Why do you never give astromech droids bases? I know they don't need them to stand. It's not about that. Just picture this. We've got the entire Ahsoka line on a shelf with all of the figures standing on their bases. And then a random Chopper just floating around on a completely different level compared to everyone else. I don't like the sound of that at all. Maybe in the future you can just sell Star Wars bases and then we can pick them up for our astromech droids, because they sure as shit fit on your rectangular display bases. Let's start off with his articulated arms first. They attach with magnets. We've got some foam pads on these pieces to protect the paint applications inside the little slots they pop into. We've got some hinges and swivels on them. We'll go through this in articulation. And the pincers can open and close. The paint applications are straightforward. They're painted in gunmetal and silver first, then we've got some speckling for weathering over the top. I don't see these as accessories. I treat them more as just part of Chopper. I'm always going to have him displayed with his arms on. We've got some switch out versions of his pincers. They're facing up because there's no wrist articulation, if you want to call it that. The pincers can still move, but they needed to go the swap out route to have the pincers at an angle. To swap them onto the arms, you remove the standard ones, then you can plug these ones in. No magnets, just a straight peg, it slides in there, and the byproduct of that is there's a swivel at the base. Please don't hate me. don't revoke my Star Wars nerd card. I've seen all of Ahsoka, I've watched all of Rebels. But I forget what this is. I can't remember every single doodad. If you know what this piece is, weigh in down in the comments. At the very least, it's well painted, shiny metallic silver and gold, and a black wash in the sculpt work. Hands down, my favourite accessory of the bunch. It's slim pickings, it's between Hu Yang and the doodad, I don't count any of this stuff as accessories. Still, this is awesome. The sculpt work is sharp as, we've even got this little antenna on one side, you can tell exactly who that's supposed to be, and they've done away with the TV scanline effect. I was partial to it, it looked like a janky Star Wars hologram effect, but a lot of folks didn't like it, now he's completely smooth. The translucent blue plastic is clear enough so that light does pass through it, and if you light this correctly, you can make it look like this is a glowing 1/6 scale hologram. You can remove Hu Yang from the little hologram projector piece. I'm probably going to give this to Ahsoka. I don't foresee me using this with Chopper in my display. And lastly, we've got two different versions of his radar dish. This one has a longer stem and it's at an angle, whereas this is the standard. It's weathered, you can see that speckling of dirt and grime, and we've got some silver chipping on it. What we're going to do now, as these pieces do not want to sit still, there we go, is get Chopper himself out here. Standing straight up and down in the light box, no crazy poses or accessories or anything like that. Not that we can really get all that crazy with poses or accessories, but I will sure as shit try at the end of the video. The benefit with translating an astromech of all characters from animation to live action is that you can be very faithful when it comes to proportions, aesthetics, the color palette, the look of the mechanics of the droid, and they were. This, to me, screams animation Chopper. The first time we saw him in live action, I believe, wasn't even in Ahsoka, it was in Rogue One. So they established the look of him all the way back when that film released. So if you wanted to have this Chopper with your Rogue One figures, I don't see why you couldn't. In fact, I'm tempted to do that myself. Just standing there in front of us, he oozes presence, and I've not even popped his arms on yet or brought his third arm out or given him a head tilt or anything really. This sassy little astromech, because of how vibrant the color scheme is. The paint applications, the weathering, the look of him, does all of the heavy lifting. Up close and personal, kicking things off with Chopper's dome. It's this really vibrant, fiery orange. Then we've got the lighter orange panels. Plenty of dirt and grime. You can tell that Chopper is a filthy little droid. He's just covered in grunge all over the place. It's not a metallic finish for the orange, but the way they've used some silver chipping just to sell the fact that it's orange paint over the top of a metallic base layer, it's worked. Light does reflect off those chipped sections, and the effect is relatively convincing. The little eyes up front are done in high gloss. Then we've got the antenna/radar dish up on top. To remove it, I would suggest rotating it as you're pulling it out. Then you can install the angled one. I'm partial to this, the just neutral position radar dish. But if you want to have Chopper talking to someone, Ahsoka perhaps, or if you want to have him holding onto the hologram projector, that might be the radar dish to do that with. That little red grill right there. It's a small detail. Something about how sharp the sculpt work is just impresses me. Now to install his very chop-specific dome arms, step 1 is to push the top part of this panel in. It's held in place with these friction rails. Then step 2, you ready? Blink and you'll miss it. You just pop them in. They attach with magnets. They're foam backed so you can slide them up and down. You're not going to do any damage to the paint apps inside those compartments. Not that you can really see in there anyway. But they're on hinges. You can move them forward and back. Then we've got more hinges working their way up the arm to the pincers up on top. While we're here, let's do the other side as well. So push the top in, grab the arm, magnetize it in place. That's it for me. well, we'll ditch this radar dish, we'll put the standard one back on, but this is my permanent display option for Chopper. This is the point in the review where I struggle to describe all of the little grills and vents and greebly sections. Around the back, he's arguably a lot less interesting compared to what we're about to look at on the front. He's mostly this off-white colour. There's a decent level of sheen to the main body. There's some speckling that only reveals itself as light bounces off the surface. Panel lining in the panel lines. A vent at the bottom. That thing that almost looks like a flap over an EV charger. And that gives me cassette vibes. Not what it is, I'm sure. If you know what any of these bits and pieces are, just tell me in the comments. Put me out of my misery. See what I mean? The front of Chopper is chock full of detail and stuff to look at. We've got this panel with the sandy colored outline, the metallic blue one, these cables down below, dirt and rust and grime collected around these bits and pieces. That one looks like it's been riveted on with the silver rivets around the edge, some glossy yellow, and his third arm. It's quite challenging to remove it from the cavity it sits in without using the tool. Luckily, they include one that you're meant to wedge in there so you can bring it out. I'm not sure yet if this one is going to be fully extended. 2 arms for Chopper, for me, is more than enough. The third one just seems like overkill. However, if you want him to hold on to the Hu Yang hologram, you're meant to use this arm to do that. This is why I love Chopper. He's so random. He's just a mismatch of all these droid bits that have come together to make for a astromech that looks so janky. But like I said, that's why I love him. We've got a different leg from one side to the other, a completely different upper leg. The bottom feet are similar, yet they too are different. We've got this circular sculpted bit on one side, but not the other. Some real rolling wheels underneath. Even the third wheel can roll. This is a rubber tire. You can remove this wheel entirely. It plugs in at the front. That peg port isn't used for anything. I'm not sure if they've got future plans for this mold or not, but if they do want to give us a Rebels version of Chopper, well, then maybe they could use that peg port for something. Trying to roll him around, it's smoother than I was expecting. I thought because of how janky this third wheel looks, he was going to be restricted in terms of the rollability factor. Talking about restrictions, I thought the same thing for this rubbery hose. It flexes, it's soft enough so that when you're moving the right leg or foot forward and back, it doesn't get in your way whatsoever. Then the rubbery hoses on the other side, they're just down the bottom, so they're not even connected up top. Before we move on, if you were curious about how the different pincers look from one side to the other, this one is the pincer bent in all the way, whereas that is the straight up and down pincer. That's the one I'm going to go with. The last little thing I want to mention is this silver ring that sits inside the body, there's more of it underneath, so that when you articulate his head forward and back, because he can do that, it's on a ball joint, this reveals itself, showing off the battle damage and the rust effects that have been painted onto the surface. Something that normally is completely hidden, but I appreciate the effort they went to get that ring to look as good as possible when it's exposed. For a quick side-by-side comparison, look at those 2 little troublemaker astromechs. We've got Chop on the left and R2 on the right, specifically the Force Awakens version for those wondering. R2 is taller than Chopper is, and he's got the die-cast dome, and light-up effects, and sound effects. Chop makes up for it in personality because of the head tilt action. He's got more accessories. Plus, he's chonkier and he's even more asymmetrical than R2 is. R2's got matching legs. Chopper absolutely does not. I was planning on doing some comparisons with the Rebels crew, but they've not been released yet. We don't have any of the Rebels characters in 1/6 scale at the time of filming this video. When they are released, we'll bring Chopper back in and we'll do some real comparisons. Going over articulation, starting off with his dome. His arms are on swivels at the base, then we've got multiple hinges, and you can open up the pincers. The dome itself, it's not just a swivel joint. We do get swivel out of it, but there's a ball joint underneath it, so he can look forward and back, and we get some sassy chopper head tilt action. His front arm is on a series of hinges, so we get a decent range of motion out of it. Then we can open up the pincers just like the top arms. His legs are on ratchets going forward and back. Then we can articulate his feet at the bottom. Finally, I'm not sure if this counts, but the third wheel can rotate where it plugs into his body. Moving on to the 3 cool and 3 annoying things. The first annoying thing is that seam right there on the front of the strut piece for the third wheel. I get it, they wanted to simplify manufacturing by having this be a shell, 2 pieces that clamp together, locking the wheel in place. If they'd have just complicated it a little bit more by having the strut and then the wheel clamp be 2 separate pieces, then that seam could have been on either side, not up front. It wouldn't have been as visible as it is now. The second annoying thing is another astromech without any die-cast content. I was hoping at least the antenna would have been made out of metal. It isn't. The third annoying thing is attaching the arms. You can do that easily. The same thing with the antenna, the third wheel, all of that, no problem, no tools required. Instead of having a magnet embedded into this arm that you could use this one to grab it with, perhaps? No, if you want to bring the third arm out, you have to use this little tool to do it. And it's not easy, it gets caught, it's very fiddly. I think they could have spent a little bit more time on the engineering for this front arm. The first cool thing is the way they've integrated the ball joint for the dome. It looks seamless. Even if you articulate him all the way forward or back, there's a second ring underneath the main one that's fully painted and detailed with some weathering on the surface. He is so much more expressive thanks to this ball joint. The second cool thing, I went back and forth on this one. They've clearly got plans for this astromech mold. That peg port isn't used for anything currently, not this third wheel. It's a completely different sized peg. That simply doesn't fit in there. What those plans might be, I'm not sure, but I can't wait to find out. The third cool thing is accessory sharing. You don't just have to use these with Chopper. You can give either of these accessories to literally any other Star Wars figure already in your collection. Wrapping up on Chopper. Based off his appearance technically in Ahsoka, but also in Rebels, and in Rogue One. The first time we saw Chop in live action, we heard him go, was in Rogue One, if I'm remembering correctly. He's fantastic. He's so much fun to mess around with. He's small, he's compact, he packs a punch. We get more than enough in terms of accessories to switch out arms and the switch out bits for the arms, the Hu Yang hologram projector, and he's got a ball joint at the dome, which is what makes him so fun to pose. We can get all of those attitude head tilt poses out of this 1/6 scale version of Chop. I was worried he wasn't going to translate well. He was going to come across cheap and sort of flimsy and hollow. He's not got any die-cast content. Somehow, he still feels like a premium little 1/6 scale astromech. I was hoping for a base. There might be a future Chopper on the way thanks to that peg port on the underside. They're showing their hand a little bit early. I don't care about any of that. If you're a Rebels fan, if you like Chopper, if you love Chopper, you owe it to yourself to pick up this figure. He is that good, at least in my opinion. Now, I got mine at a discount from Pop Collectibles. As always, do your own research, make sure you're comfortable before buying. I've popped a link to their site in the description, along with the discount code Justin's Collection, for 5% off your order if you decide to buy from there. While you're down there, why not hit that subscribe, bell notification icon, and join button if you like the sound of seeing your name in the end credits of my reviews. Like, comment, and subscribe. We'll catch you in the next video.